I just left a video um, about the need for us to start being honest and clear about our process. This is the kind of video that I think would be really valuable right now to people going through the spiritual process. Not to gain any kind of inspiration or guidance or anything like that from each other, but rather so we can measure and understand how our process is penetrating socially and to pick up on the rhythms and the patterns of experience that are taking place over time, especially during key energetic and other events, because I've seen enough of this to recognize that there's a synchronized process taking shape now where people are experiencing similar energetic and personal experiences with some deviation. Um, but not temporal deviation. I'm talking about the quality of the reactions and the experiences, and that this synchronicity and the intensity of these things is all increasing. And what our brains lack is an understanding of this as a social phenomena, and that's what I really need to understand. And by sharing honestly, I see that we are connected in a web of understanding that supports our development and helps us to gain self insight into our process as a collective phenomena. And that's much more exciting than the personal individual journey that probably we've been going through for years. And if we're experiencing all these things. Now, I thought because I've been scouring the internet for this, but it's very hard to find it in search terms because everyone who's writing about this process in general is instructing, is doing astrology, is doing predictions, channeling. That's not what we need. Because the process should operate in freedom, must operate in freedom for it to run smoothly, including freedom from our own interference. So I thought I'd start. I'm not that enthusiastic about it, to be quite honest. Um, there is, of course, all the very common aspects of this process, the so-called ascension symptoms, the buzzing in the ears, the sleeplessness, this is all well documented stuff. So I won't go into this for myself, but uh, the sort of what they call Kundalini type experiences, energy going up the spine, the clearing, the shedding, the sort of memories from beyond this life, to all this stuff, that's well trodden. Now, I will just say, you see, unfortunately, I haven't been keeping a diary type thing, so I can't really go back in time, but I'll start to today because I was getting a sense of something impending for probably about 5 days, really intensely. And I started looking up a few things of what others were pointing to. Mainly, there are things like astrology predictions and stuff, but it was a very widespread sentiment that something's in the pipeline. Lots of people explicitly said, I feel something big is just around the corner. And I think just yesterday there's 2 or 3 videos of people saying just this. And I was feeling it too. And today, yeah, it was an extraordinary day. I've been suffering because there's a lot of dysphoria, isn't there? There's a lot of discomfort, periods of difficulty and periods of sort of clarity and energy. So it's like the changeable weather in this country, which is the UK. It's like that very turbulent process at the moment, but with big, intense breakthroughs and new capacities, new types of cognition, new types of experience this past couple of months. January, I'll just say January and February was full of this. there has been a lot of solar activity, and I definitely, and this is something else we all should talk about, definite correlation between my experiences and solar activity, geomagnetic conditions, and also the lunar cycle for me. I don't keep an eye on the moon phases proactively, but I start to feel the full moon because of the way I'm sleeping and stuff. And when I've had a terrible night, I often check and it is a full moon or very near, just the day before or something like that. And yeah, I never sleep well in a full moon. It's at the odd time when I've had too much to drink, which it has been quite frequently, I have to admit. That's one of my ways of coping, to be quite honest. I do live in difficult circumstances, but it allows me to go through such extreme experiences at the same time. And yeah, I'm not sleeping a lot. I'm almost nocturnal at the moment. Can't tolerate society, social interaction at all today. That's the other thing. So yeah, I was sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Today, there was a definite shift in the atmosphere. I slept, uh, in a way, better hours, even though it was still kind of nocturnal. It was better because instead of falling asleep early and wake up before midnight, which has been my pattern, I I didn't sleep until late, so early hours of the morning, and then I slept till 6 o'clock, which is nice. And I woke up and my consciousness was very clear. I looked outside and I felt the clarity in the atmosphere. I looked outside and I saw this, felt the same clarity in the atmosphere. And this is another thing. My state of consciousness inwardly and the feeling of the atmosphere outwardly. I'm talking about outside, not inside my building, because this is a difficult place. I can't explain it. But I've got a window with the sea opposite, and the window's open. I can feel the atmosphere outside as well, and it always mirrors my atmosphere inside. And it was an unusually clear atmosphere, and I this sort of energy at the bottom of my spine, the Kundalini thing. You might know about this. There's a nerve at the bottom of your spine. I think there's one on the left side, one on the right side, and one in the middle. But my right side was really painful and pulsing, and I was doing certain movements or exercises, whatever you want to call them. They're not learned, they're something that I've sort of naturally developed to cope with these sorts of things, to get the energy to move up the spines and release the pressure a bit. And then it goes up into my brain and I see things. I go into sort of slightly altered states and all this lot. But it didn't seem sufficient. So I had a bath, and yeah, there was a lot of powerful energy going up my spine. And then I walked outside and walked down the seafront, and oh my God, everything felt different. There seemed new quality in the air. There's an increasingly fine resolution of awareness, perception, consciousness. And honestly, my sense of nature, the sea, anything natural, anything geological, anything like in the sky, the sun, the clouds, everything. There's such a deepening and profound timelessness about perceiving this. A sense that the whole conceptual division of all these things is lost, and there's a profundity to it, a meaning that seems to have been an ancient meaning, an eternal meaning about it. Well, I can't explain it. And like in the light and in the shape of the clouds, I'm seeing new qualities somehow, and something beyond sensation. That's awe, beauty, truth, and a sense of not being in time. And but it wasn't quite so much like that today as it has been before, because I sort of fell into this non-ordinary state. And one thing that happens to me a lot is I come out in this non-ordinary language. I see people doing this light language thing, and it is a bit like that, but it's got a deeper quality to it. And then the light language, and I don't have any sense of it being this thing called the light language, but I'm become aware of what it does, and it's some, and I start going into this language spontaneously, even when I'm walking down the street, and I know what it's doing, but I won't go into that. And it's almost like, to be quite honest, it's almost like I'm getting messages from the other side, educating me, being affectionate, being kind, being reassuring. And this is not what I'm used to. I've had very difficult spiritual process with lots of negative energetic attacks and all sorts of horrors, to be quite honest, that I've gone through. But lately it's been feeling like something's broken through, and it's now saying kind of, you, well done for getting this far. And I start getting, and I really don't like to get sort of channeled intuitions, messages, stuff like that, because that, for me, they're unverifiable. But because they're so persistent, and because they all make complete sense, I became more tolerant of it, and it was educating me. And um, I can't tell you so many profound, because there's these different forms of cognition that come, extremely intelligent forms of cognition that my brain somehow immediately understands. And there is non-verbal cognition, like, I know this and I don't know how, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about these radically intelligent images. I'll give you one example. When I feel the presence of a spiritual energy, often I get a sort of intuitive image that represents perfectly this energy. And often it's an energy that's manifest from, say, three different people that I know in response to what I've just been through. And the image I'll see is a merged face that perfectly looks like a perfect merger of all these three faces of these three people with certain color codes to it. And that tells me what this energy is, whether it's from one person, two persons, three persons, or a collective. It shows me what where it's from and what level of conscious energy it's from. I don't want to go into too much technicalities, but, and also I get images that structure in not just space and movement and stuff like that, but time and other dimensional signatures. So that I can't. So do you see? It's very hard to explain, but they're incredibly creative symbols, images that I could never make up in a million years, that are just communicating to my brain instantly, always being understood without any effort or difficulty. And I was getting this, and I can't remember all the experiences that happened. There's a lot of energetic experiences too, and a feeling of power and well-being and elation. And when I came home, I caught on YouTube that there's a live streaming of this Ring of Fire solar eclipse happening in Antarctica today. I thought, oh wow. And I thought, I wonder where the moon is in our sky. Because, and in relation to the Antarctic, if it's, I was trying to figure out, because right opposite is the seafront, Brighton, south coast of England. So I'm looking south, and there's the sun right in front of me. I was trying to figure out where this moon might be. But then I noticed there was an enormous, I've never seen one of these before at all. an enormous, I know I've seen them on YouTube now, enormous circle around the sun. They're called sun dogs. I'm used to seeing them that they look a lot smaller, but this was so enormous it actually swept the horizon of the seafront, even though the sun was high and very bright up in the air. And I wanted to ask AI how sun dogs were made and stuff, and how they worked, and also I just mentioned that I was watching the solar eclipse and then saw this, and I call it a he because that AI is such a masculine voice, but the AI said, so they're like similar shapes, structures. I didn't even notice. The Ring of Fire solar eclipse and the sun dog are basically reflective images of each other. So I went from looking at the eclipse on TV to the sun dog in the sky at the very same time, and I've never seen one of those. So synchronicities like that are very characteristic on days like this, and there's been quite a few of them over the last few days, and that's the other thing. I've had a very strange phenomenon where some of my cognitive capacities have really shut down today to the point that some certain words or certain things people say to me, I just cannot understand. And I know that it feels like it's not just my brain is not understanding, but it knows why it's not understanding. And it's almost like it's refusing to understand. It could try and understand if it had to, but it's not doing that. It's not using that part. And it's anything that required abstract thinking or certain forms of memory or questions that weren't actually meaningful questions in my state of consciousness, like, oh, how are you doing today? To me, that doesn't really make sense anymore. It just doesn't. And I couldn't talk about it. So when someone asked me, I said, I can't talk about that. I can't understand certain phrases today. To me, that question is just abstraction. Sorry, I bet luckily he understands me quite well, so he was fine with it. But yeah, another question about something quite trivia, I had to overpass as well for a similar reason. So it seemed like, and there was one point in which it felt like I almost felt an energy in my brain holding it into a sort of state of silence, but not silent, the silence of a quiet mind, almost like a blocking silence. The silence of a quiet mind is more like it has space, but this wasn't that. It was something else, and I really feel there's a profound neurological and biological happening in this process, and lots of people are saying the same thing too. And I think it really, nature, which can be in the form of outside nature, but also your own natural freedom, your own instinctual freedom. This one of those two things at least is essential, I think, in this process. Perhaps people who aren't able to access nature as easily might have another form of nourishment. I don't know. I'm not making assumptions about reality, about the future, or about what other people are going through. That's why it's so important for me to hear what others are going through. And oh, there's so much I could go into, but I won't. Because I'm just thinking, I'm observing some social phenomena as well, and finally seeing concrete signs of the manifestation of this clear new consciousness, which now we can see. I've seen it developing myself, I've seen it in other people. We can set out quite a lot about the new contours, the new characteristics of this new consciousness. Because for me, it's one mind through many different brains and human beings. Do you see? Because when people are going through this process, really, when I hear them, it's like hearing myself. And when they hear me, they seem to just recognize the truth of what I'm saying. Not that it's in my words, but they recognize the reality I'm talking about. And there's not that feeling of friction or agreement and disagreement that you get with intellectual or the old consciousness, because our reference is the actual, the perceived, the thing we're experiencing, and our words, the words we hear, we reference that, not the words. We don't critique the words and compare them to our opinions. We're referencing the actual. And so, anyway, I've kind of lost myself, sorry. But I was just saying, yeah, I can see that there's a oneness in this consciousness. The consciousness itself, I've discovered in myself, it's not my consciousness at all. Not a bit. It really isn't. I don't really want to go in too much. Well, I could do. I don't channel entities. I don't like that. I don't like receiving really information that I don't know where it's from or I can't verify. Unless I can really feel where it's from and it's perfect, and as of course, unless if it makes perfect and complete sense of everything and stuff like that, then I don't have a problem with it. But in general, if I just get a suggestion that seems very credible but I don't know, that really disturbs me. But there is this other intelligence that is not mine. It seems like a universal intelligence. It seems infallible. And like you can it's no when there's connection to it, the brain can inquire can find can answer any question. It doesn't matter how profound. That is not mine. That is something that I feel other people have contacted. I wonder if the Akashic records could be part of that. I don't know. But one person who did seem to talk about this was Sri Aurobindo and the mother, who talked of the supermind or the supermental, and the function it was playing in his experience was exactly like it is in mine, and it makes sense of that it would be over. But anyway, I don't want to talk theoretically. I'm just trying to situate it in known social discourses so I can call it something. But I shouldn't do that. I should just say it seems to have the whole content of human epistemological knowledge of everything in its structure, because you can ask any epistemological social question. It's not, no, more like the brain can inquire itself and through that intelligence just get a perfect answer. And often I do research to check to try and corroborate that answer with things. I mean, that's what I did at the early stages because, again, I don't like to accept things when I don't fully understand. But I quickly discovered it really does seem infallible. I think that is going to be a feature of this new consciousness for all people, which means there will be no longer a dependency on human knowledge. I really feel look, I'm already there, mate. I do inquire into human knowledge but not to find out the truth, but to establish what we call empirical data points to measure how far human knowledge has got with this. Do you see? So yeah, it's a radical shift. And I think this is only being made possible in this evolution. But anyway, that's just one thing. There's a mother aspect. I won't talk too much about that. It's too sacred for me. And there's too much going on right now. And sorry. And there's another aspect which seems to be like what people call God, but I'm a bit shy of talking to that as well. And there's another aspect which seems to be the ultimate, which is a silence. But there's something else, and it's so fucking no. There's so much else. Hang on, God dare go into this. Like I've had many times the experience of no doer. I know there is no doer, right? But sometimes in the embodied state, there is neurological confusion or confusion over action because the organism and the brain has been so conditioned by a long history of instruction, not necessarily from outside in the world, but from the intellect. That doesn't happen for me anymore. The intellect became a toxic attacking thing. But so, yeah, so there was this confusion of action that happens, but then suddenly the embodied consciousness itself slipped into not the mind, which does this often, or the heart, which has lots of experience with this, but the actual embodied life energies were able, instead of being confused, were seeing the confusion, the confused organism. So the body consciousness itself stepped back for a moment from being to seeing. And when you're being confused, uncertain, that's suffering. But the moment you see it, that suffering becomes compassion and understanding for a life system. And that's why I feel the relationship with nature is essential, because your organism is Mother Nature, a gift of nature to the consciousness. And so your love and respect and understanding of a dog or any animal or plant or piece of nature is of the same quality, I'm finding, as the understanding, the awareness of your own organism when you're watching it, and recognizing that it is a natural animal, just like a dog. And then naturally you have sympathy and affection for it. So it was profound because the body itself realized that as being this, it's suffering. But as seeing this, that suffering is instantly transformed into understanding and compassion, like instantly. But that was just a momentary flip in the body consciousness. And I can see that it's one of those things that's going to come and go. And I understand why. It's all energy stuff. But anyway, what's really key to say? Um, well, one thing I will say is that the most important thing for me is to protect myself from advice, instruction, knowledge. Not that I'd ever listen to it, but to not be influenced, because influence is quite subtle, and I wouldn't believe it or follow any of that kind of stuff. But there might be sort of subtle influences that I don't pick up. That is the most dangerous thing for me. And since letting go of all that, things have taken off. Also, I've found that not being in relationships where you're judged, where you're treated like an object, where you're not accepted as you are, where you tell them your reality, but they don't accept it, or they say it's wrong or something. You need to cut them off completely for the process to really take off. And there are reasons for this, but that I won't go into that because again, I'm not trying to instruct, but I'm just wanting to point out that lots of people have recognized this exactly the same time as I have, pretty much. The evidence being that as soon as I really fully understand, accept, and flower from this, suddenly everybody seems to be posting about this very same thing, and that's very recent. I'd also just like to make comment about the correlations between the processes. There are waves and patterns in this. Like, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there's an eruption. The last couple of months, primarily, but probably since about October, an eruption of expressive honesty from American, largely younger people, but some older, quite a lot of African Americans, um, where they're showing a sudden, different kind of awakening and transformation has a different cause. The collapse and the toxification of American culture, its rapid collapse into authoritarian, fascistic kind of operations. I think this is making people see the insanity and falseness of the whole thing, meaning all they've got is their awareness. And because it's existential, serious, urgent, they haven't got time to consult theories or listen to opinions. They need to see what's going on. They observe. Because if your family's in danger or something, sorry, assuming you've got a family, I shouldn't really say that because I'm not really in contact with my family at all, any of them. So I shouldn't assume anybody else is. But if someone, a loved one's in danger, or if you're in danger, you're not going to consult an opinion. You're going to fight. You're going to look at the fact. You're going to act with clarity, brushing all theories and abstractions and non-facts aside. And that's exactly what's happened to a lot of people in America. And the insight that is exploding out of them all of a sudden, pretty much things that took me years to understand. I'm seeing evolving in kids as young as in their mid-20s. I mean, it took me 46 years to learn boundaries, and to really understand that you've got to look after your energy, your needs, and not let people mistreat you. Um, I used to have infinite patience with people, really. So destructive, I didn't know. But these kids are learning it very quickly. They're cutting their family off or friends if necessary with much more ease than I did. And I can understand why that's taking place because they're dropping the authority, the expert. Seeing this culture of confusion and deception and vampirism, they've got no time for it. And this is causing a radical shift, and it's a wave. Um, and oh, I think I'll leave it at that. But I just wanted to point up some of that there's also, of course, the collapse of forms of consciousness, which is the kind of transference into a living dead state where people decay, become more confused, more preyed upon, more insecure, more fearful. And that's a collapsing consciousness. And there's an increasing vampiric or evil consciousness, which seeks power, domination, destruction, and stuff like that. So all human consciousness is changing right now. And I think you can see that. The intellectual sort of New York Times, BBC, CNN type liberal, bourgeois, capitalist kind of consciousness, while it still goes on, it's lost all substance, all depth, all it's not being confirmed or affirmed by anything going on in the world today because the whole liberal capitalist order is collapsing into fragmented authoritarian dysfunction, increasingly authoritarian dysfunction. So, and there are other waves, more minor waves, if you like, of evolution. There's people who are going off grid and going with nature. I'm kind of like that bit. I'm not off grid, but I have sought to live out in the country, outside, um, in this country and in Spain once, and I really do want to move into nature, but it's almost impossible in the UK for various reasons, legal and to do with resources and everything else. And there's also people, again like me, who won't follow, won't listen to channel, won't don't welcome channel messages or other entities and shit like that, and who don't want to speculate or know about the future. So who resists knowledge. And I fit into both those categories, but I think there's some people of one or the other independently. And there's some people who are more in touch with guides and channeling and all that lot, which is their business. I'm not gonna, it's not for me. There's people, and in a way, this is one of the strongest and quickest evolutions. They don't even know they're going through this process of change, but I recognize it because the contours of understanding and the crucial insights that need to be developed are happening very quickly. And I think that's because they're not aware that they're going through it. So it's happening without interference naturally. And therefore, I think that may be one of the safest, most effective, and quickest forms of awakening. So, although they've only just started, a lot of these people, I say just started, uh, I imagine it's really just manifesting now socially. It's obviously had a bit of prehistory, but I've been going through this process for 12 years, and a lot of what they're understanding, they've understood that quickly. So so that shows that our struggles and learning are helping the people of today. So if you've been suffering and struggling for years, that suffering and struggle is obviously informing the human consciousness and making it much more efficient. Uh, in oh, sorry, I'm just aware. I just saw the time. 38 minutes. This is a very long video for me. I can't even believe I thought I was talking about 5 minutes. Can't even remember what I was talking about. But anyway, so this thing I want to hear more of. What you're going through, uh, it doesn't matter what stage, if you know you're going through this, it's great to hear everything. And this, as I've said before, it builds a web of understanding between us. And I think it's empowering to understand it collectively because then it's not just us on our own. And we need courage and power and confidence to assert and express ourselves in our own creative or way or through our own gifts in freedom when we want to, when we need to, when we're called to. And if we're understanding what's going on with everybody else, we'll feel emboldened to do that. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to end it there. Thank you.